we are here. Hi, Miriam. How are
Hi,
you?
Minna. I'm doing well. How are you?
So it feels quite weird that we sit across each other. We're two rooms apart, and we finally get time to sit together like this.
Right?
And I can interview my friend, my colleague. So, Dr. Levine here. Please tell us about yourself.
Well, I was born and grew up in Huntington Woods, and I still live in Huntington Woods. I progressed a whole 6 houses from the house where I grew up. And I live there with my two beautiful children. I have Ariel is almost 11. She's in fifth grade. And Jacob is almost 8.5, and he's in second grade.
Nice. So Dr. Levine is an infectious disease doctor who works with me, and I'm so grateful that I have such a nice friend and colleague here. But I had my own reasons to select infectious disease. What was your reason to select infectious disease as your specialty?
I really like the detective aspect. We don't get to come in when people aren't sure what's going on. We really dig meticulously. We tease out the history. We do a careful exam. We look carefully at the labs. And then we take a step back too, because it's not just what's going on with the patient. ID docs, we get to ask, why is that happening? And I think in a few kind of seminal moments that have made me really know that I was meant for ID. One thing was growing up with a father who was an ID doc and watching and listening to both of my parents talk medicine and sort of seeing how cool that sounded. I also remember when I was a medical student and I was commuting over summer when I was doing research at Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, but I was living outside of Tel Aviv, and it was an hour and a half commute each way by bus. And a lot of times I was trying to perfect my Hebrew, so I would read an Israeli novel, but I also read the Year 2 microbiome textbook because wanted to get a head start on the course. And it was actually kind of fun to read about the different organisms. And then I think I also realized that it could be somewhere where I was a good fit. I had a case when I was a senior resident. It was beginning of my third year. And we had a gentleman come to us out of the ICU, and he had a septic subdeltoid bursitis. And it grew strep pneumo. Blood grew cleared rapidly. And I had never seen subdeltoid bursitis before. And I did a little bit of a brief literature search, and it said this is a deep bursa. This should not be contiguous spread. This is likely hematogenous spread. I go to see the patient, and he's got a very loud, at least grade 3 mitral regurg murmur.
Wow.
And so we pushed to repeat an echo, and he had significant endocarditis.
Wow.
And I said, wow, if I hadn't asked why and kind of pushed, I wouldn't really thought of that necessarily.
Right.
So those are things that made me think.
Right.
So
Basically, some of those life events, that happens, and it makes you choose ID. And nobody has ever told us in ID rotation it's boring. They might go to choose something else, but nobody has told us that it's boring. Most of us have been in, academics, also done private practice. And for some of you who are listening, if you want to know how an academic practice looks like versus private, can you contrast between them?
Sure. And I think there are advantages and disadvantages to both depending on what your own goals are and what fits for you. I spent about 10 months in private practice when I finished my fellowship. You work every day. You see your patients. You may talk to the primary teams who consult you. Sometimes they really just want you to do what you do and let them know if there's trouble. And, you may go to radiology or to the lab. So it's you and your patients. And sometimes that can be kind of fun. You just get a doctor all day. And you have a lot of flexibility in terms of your timing. It's just you. And some people have a lot of satisfaction just from being a doctor. As in academic, we are trying to wear multiple hats. And it can be a lot of fun. I mean, teaching trainees makes me happy. We get to train the next generation of physicians, show them how cool what we do is, and pass on different tricks and different teaching points and pearls that we have learned. And that's always a lot of fun. It takes for some people that isn't what they want. You have to be willing to kind of let go of it, because as the attending, my job is let the trainee do as much as possible as long as it's not going to harm the patient. So I have to take a step back and let that trainee fly and see if they fail or if they succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'll always step in if they're going to do something that will hurt the patient, but it's not for the faint of heart. You have to give a little bit of freedom, and you're biting your nails sometimes. And you have to double check everything they do.
Summarized pretty well. People mostly comparison between two as money, right? They think, oh, private practice, maybe it's more for money, and academic because you just want to be more research oriented and things like that. But as Dr. Levine summarized here, there are a lot of nuances and aspects of going into private practice. I think both of us started first with private practice, so it was a lot of workload, and that kind of, at least for me, I felt like it helped me in gearing up next level, which is
Right.
like seeing a high patient load. And in academic, as you said, we definitely enjoy working with the trainees and that aspect. So I'm going a little bit now to more of your personal life, and it feels funny that I meet her every day, but we really don't get the time to sit across the table and talk. But let me ask you, what is your daily routine looks like?
My daily routine. Well, I wake up, I let myself scroll on my phone a little bit, maybe 5, 10 minutes, then I get out of bed, get my day. I try to get my children's lunches ready if I can before I wake them up. And depending, I try to review some charts before I wake them up. It depends how early I went to bed, but when I'm really kind of in my groove, do that. And when I'm really in my groove, which has been a little bit, then I actually review charts while I'm power walking on my treadmill. So those are more aspirational some of the time. A lot of times, if I can just get up and get the lunches done and myself dressed and ready, that is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, it's you have to out of the house somehow.
And then I get the children up and make sure they get their breakfast, get everything packed. Some days I drive morning carpool once a week.
Mhm.
So then I'm taking everyone, and I actually drive about 20 minutes in the opposite direction of work if I'm taking carpool. So then I would drop them at school, drop off school, and then drive right to work. I'll sit in the office, review all the charts. I might call some teams if there's some management I want to change.
Mm-hmm.
And usually I do draft all my assessment and plans before I go and see my patients, because oftentimes I have enough of an idea, and that way the teams might have an idea of what I'm thinking too.
Mm-hmm.
I then try to round as much as I can before our noon conference and finish up after conference. And then if I have time, I might go home before I pick up if I'm driving carpool that afternoon. And then sometimes I might have time for a quick errand because I work part-time. So I have short days Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and a full day on Wednesday. One thing I really try to do at least once a week is to visit my grandmother who's in memory care.
Mm-hmm.
And I take the children after school activities. And then before you know it, it's time to try to give dinner and read stories before bed. And so I still haven't really developed many hobbies outside of the time that I am working and with the children. Sometimes I use the time that I don't get them to just catch up on going through mail or paperwork or just errands. But once a week I have been going out and trying some Israeli folk dancing.
Wow. And I'm sure a lot of people, especially women who are hearing this, can, get some message from what we are doing. So, Miriam, you did talk about initially also that your inspiration choosing infectious disease was your dad, but what kind of inspiration you take from your mom and dad when it comes to personal or professional?
Sure. In terms of inspiration, definitely for personal life, both of my parents, my mom raised 4 children while working as a physician and overcommitting herself. And I don't know what's in the coffee she drinks, but I'm scared and also really wish I could have some.
Yeah.
Her stamina, her love of what she does, both of there's amazing ability to teach. They both teach in very different styles, but I've tried to take a little from the way each of them does and the way that they each care for their patients. Again, very different styles, but just watching how my mom keeps up with the literature in a way I don't know how she does it. And just my dad's skills and both of them, like, and their dedication to their patients and doing right. It's amazing. And in terms of personal life otherwise, it would be my grandparents. They've been some of the most generous people I've ever known.
Right. And I don't know if a lot of people know about her parents, and I can put a description below. That would be like another podcast. But maybe with your dad, I think I only met professionally, right? Do you sometimes feel a lot of pressure of being in a household with such talented, high achieving people? I
do. I wanted to grow up and be as good a doctor as my parents, and it felt like such an almost insurmountable task. I wanted to be as passionate and as smart and, as successful. And I said, how can I even possibly hope to do that? And I also just wanted to make them proud of me. And I don't know, I hope I do. But actually, when I applied for residency, of course, I was applying at Wayne, where I was a medical student, and they all knew me quite well in the Department of Medicine. And they only asked me, I think, 2 questions for my interview. It was very long. But the one that Dr. Batiste asked me was, have you thought about the ramifications of training where your parents are? And I said, yes, I think that it will push me to prove to myself and to everybody that I'm here, because I deserve to be here, not because of my parents. And I knew that that would be stressful, but I also thought, maybe it will push me to do my very best.
Let me ask you this. Have you now found your own way? You feel like at this particular point in your life, you have just carved your own path and you're just following that. That pressure thing is now gone.
I still feel just the pressure I put on myself to try to do the best by my patients that I can, to try to do the best by my children that I can. But I mean, I think I've sort of trying to find my own academic niche.
So let me talk to each other quite freely. And at least from my side, I can say that I didn't felt a bad competition, It was always and always a good competition. Like I was like inspired. Oh my gosh, she gave us such a great presentation. I'm envious with her about a lot of things. But I never felt never felt like, I don't know if it is something in workplaces as people put through that 2 women cannot be good friends or best friends, but I have always and always just gotten good vibes from you. No, it's
Yeah, because women we should support each other, right?
Yeah, and I'm not just saying for the sake of interview or something. That is like, I think even for getting a job or something, if I just told you in a passing and you really look for me, I mean, we are not related or anything. But I think that's a camaraderie much needed in current world with everything happening around. We need to stand for each other.
Yeah. I've been fortunate to experience really just support from other women. When I was in private practice, I was with an absolute doll of a woman. Her name is Lata Kanan. She deserves a shout out. And I remember that she asked me as we were speaking, and everything was very informal because she'd kind of met me informally already. And she asked me if I had children. And, if this had been a formal interview, of course, that would have been technically a total no. But I said, I know her. This isn't formal. I don't care that you're asking, and I actually would like to know what you think. And so I said, yes, I have a daughter, and we have a baby boy, God willing, on the way. And she said, I get it. I have been there. You have a sick kid one day, something happens, you can't come in. Don't worry, I'll cover for you. And I said, this is an environment. This is what I want. Is a supportive environment.
And what are some of the coping skills when it comes to crisis situation? I know she is laughing, but she will say something. Okay.
Carbohydrates. In all honesty, I probably do rely on carbohydrates too much.
Does it look like carbohydrates storing of them? Yeah.
When I try really to try to cope, I try to journal. I try herbal tea. Being outside sometimes helps, even if it's just to get a breath of fresh air and walk around the block.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I'm able to exercise, moving my body, definitely you feel better afterward. Calling a friend, and sometimes you just have to scream in the shower.
So we are trying to be a little bit more open in our conversations. Do you advise therapy sessions for women who are seeking some sort of help? They cannot, they don't want to talk to their parents. They don't have a good friend or family support, something like that. I personally haven't tried, but sometimes I feel like, why not?
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong. It's a mental health is health, just like hypertension, just like diabetes. And so I think there's absolutely nothing wrong. For some conditions, you take a medication. For some, you talk to somebody. And I absolutely think that if you're going through something and you need to talk to somebody, it can be a great way.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, not all of these conditions end up needing medications, because people fear about, oh, I'll be put on a bunch of medications. It might be just psychotherapy sessions, talking about. So we talked about your crisis management skills. Is that specifically something you do for your time management skill? Do you have a system that you have come over the years?
I would love you to share a secret if you have one, because I don't have one yet.
Yeah.
I think routines help.
Yeah.
Because if you do the same thing, then you don't have to spend the mental energy. I'm not great at doing it, but I know for some people, they have a set meal rotation. Mondays you eat this for dinner, Tuesdays you eat that, and you don't have to think. You know what your kids will or won't eat. You've got that on the menu. So sometimes routines, I think, can help. I definitely think being cognizant of our phones helps.
Yes.
You have to try. Otherwise, I think saying no. You have to be willing. You have to know your limits, because you want to do everything. You want to try, your hand in new professional experiences, new things with the kids, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if you try to do them all, you won't be able to do any of them well, and you'll just not be enjoying.
Right.
So I think I once heard on a podcast, they said, if it's not a hell yes, it should be a hell no. And I think there's some truth to that.
Yep. Yeah. Throughout all this time, if there's one thing that I have also learned is organize. You could be put in any bad situation. You could be leading into a path you have no clue about it. But throughout pandemic, throughout all sort of crisis, one thing that has helped me also is to stay organized as much as possible.
Oh, it
and
helps
as
so much.
Yeah, as you said, to get rid of that mental fatigue. What are you gonna do next? What are you gonna do next? So Miriam, what's the toughest part of being a mom? A working mom?
The competing demands, really. It's trying to do your best by your children and do your best by your work. Feeling like you kind of are always crunched and pulled in two different directions is probably the toughest thing. Personally, for me, the way my schedule works, there are days where I feel crunched trying to finish work in time to go pick up the kids. Or there's something going on at the school and I know I cannot be there. And then there's times I'm with the kids and I say, oh, but I didn't get to check this on a patient. Is that, so you feel like you're always kind of doing the best you can, but it's not quite enough.
Do you tell yourself that it's okay sometimes, that this is this much I can do for work today, this much I'm gonna do for parenting? Do you keep on talking to yourself?
I do. I mean, I think you just have to say you do the best you can. And remember, with the kids, for sure, you have to remember it's quality over quantity time.
Yeah.
And, tell yourself patients are very resilient, impressively so.
Yeah.
And if they're very sick, then they're very sick anyway.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of try, it helps a little bit to limit the guilt.
Yeah. So there's nothing like a perfect work-life balance.
There was there was a talk when I was I think I was a medical student, and I was at ACP. And one of the lines that they had was, you can have anything you want within reason, but not everything you want. Meaning you can't do it all. Lean in is a fallacy. You have to figure out, For example was, say you really want some very, very fancy sports car. Okay, but you probably need to have a very small house or a small apartment then, because you only have so much money.
Right.
Same thing if you're talking about time. You could really invest and really develop some aspect of your career, some aspect of your parenting, some aspect of your relationship with your significant other, but you can't do it all. Yeah. Not all the time.
Do you also feel that it helped you when you started talking about it? I mean, either to your work colleagues, your boss, or somebody to get out of this situation? Because where I'm coming from is a lot of people have the problems, but they keep it to themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll deal with it. I'll be that mom who wake up at 5 o'clock, make a 3-course meal, run to give my presentation and do everything. But if you just step out of your room and ask your colleague, by the way, my kid is sick, or I have to pick up, can you see one of my extra patient, or maybe tell your boss, or can you do my presentation? Those things help, and I personally feel that it's been helpful, easy to talk in this program we have.
We have a very supportive environment. I have to say, I feel very grateful. We support each other, we cover for each other, and I feel really grateful. It's one of the reasons that I'm here.
Yeah.
Even though I'm driving 21 miles each way.
Right. And I think that's something really important to choose your job. If you have a great job, the rest of all the things will fall in the right place. So we are almost coming to our end of session now. And I would like to ask you one interesting thing about yourself. If I have to Google search about you, what is something that I'll not find in the internet?
I don't know how much there is out there in the internet. I don't think there's probably that much.
I feel I have a knack for comedy.
Right? I used to write a lot of parody and satire. There you go. I suppose that counts.
Have you actually performed?
Oh, God, no. I don't think I could do stand-up. There's a reason I'm not a surgeon, and one of those reasons is because I can't think on my feet.
Oh, my God.
If you do stand-up, I think you have to be able to adapt quickly.
Right. But I know she has a good sense of humor also. But it was so lovely talking to you as always. Thank you. And I hope we can continue have our sessions. And this is just a brief overview of how two working women can try to somehow balance their work while maintaining their relationships outside the work. And hope you learned from this our conversation. And have a good day, Miriam.
You too, Nina.
Thank you.
We made it to Friday.